Honorable Tampulik, I'm sure the line is better now. You can hear me.
Yes, I can hear you now.
Great, great, great. Thank you once again for making time to join us this morning. This morning, our focus has been on, dealing with traffic. But before we even get to dealing with traffic with you, because Engineer Maham actually talks about how you can defer to the engineers and they would get it done. Yes, we know that today the LI has been withdrawn. But since you are in the transport ministry, just help us understand what necessitated the amendment to the LI, and at what point in time did you decide to introduce, the amendment of Regulation 74 into the whole amendments?
Thank you very much. And your question, I think, addresses the matter holistically. The Ministry of Transport, the parent ministry of the National Road Safety Authority and the Driver and Vehicle Licensing Authority, thought that the Road Traffic Regulations LI 2180 of 2012 requires some amendments in view of the changing times that we find ourselves. It's been in existence for the past 12 years. So there was need for us to look at some amendment to bring it up to speed with modern times. For instance, at the time that it was passed, we did not have electric vehicles. What number plates do we use for electric vehicles and so on and so forth? What are the technical specifications that the DVLA has to look at before they register? All of these things needed to be considered. The number plates, you understand. The trade plates. We looked at, age limits for driving license issuance and so on and so forth. So those are some of the provisions that we sent to Parliament. And in February this year, we had a meeting together with the Attorney General Department with the Subsidiary Legislations Committee of Parliament. What we sent to Parliament at the time, and if you don't mind, I'll just read Regulation 39.
Okay.
Originally, that's what we sent to Parliament. The principal enactment is amended in Regulation 74 by the substitution for Sub-Regulation 3 and it reads, despite Sub-Regulation 1, a siren or bell may be fitted as a warning appliance and used on the following classes of motor vehicles. A government vehicle used for official purposes by the head of state. B, a police service vehicle. C, a motor vehicle used by the Ghana National Fire Service. D, a motor vehicle used by the National Ambulance Service. E, a motor vehicle used as an ambulance by a hospital or a clinic. F, a motor vehicle used by other recognized government security agencies. And G, a bullion vehicle registered by the licensing authority. These are the provisions that we took to Parliament. And when you go and you have the pre-laying meeting with the Subsidiary Legislations Committee, you go through the amendments one after the other. So it was in the course of going through clause by clause review that we got to this place. And members of the Subsidiary Legislations Committee, chaired by Honorable Dr. Dominica Yine, my former law lecturer at Legon Law School, insisted that we must expand the scope of this particular clause to include the vice president, because the president has been mentioned, the head of state has been mentioned, but the vice president has not been mentioned.
Okay.
So we should include the vice president, the speaker of parliament, the chief justice, ministers of state, justices of the Supreme Court, and members of parliament.
Okay.
My minister at that meeting disagreed that if we have to expand the scope of this application, it's going to create some amount of chaos in the society. I mean, you can imagine all 275 members of parliament driving around the place with siren blaring all over the place. There was going to be some amount of disorder. So the Ministry of Transport disagreed at that meeting, and the records will show. Now, subsequent to that, the Attorney General knows a letter with the amendments that have been proposed and still stood by these particular provisions in March this year and sent to the Subsidiary Legislation Committee. Now, the committee insisted that we must include those particular amendments that have been proposed
Okay.
to include all this category of officers. Now, on the day that I was detailed by the minister to go and do the laying of the instruments, when I rose to lay the instruments, I was stopped by the chairman of the Subsidiary Legislation Committee, and the video is there for everybody to see, on the 14th of June. And so I was stopped in my tracks, and Speaker directed that we should let the chairman of the committee verify. And we went outside of the chamber to the lobby, and the chairman of the Subsidiary Legislation Committee confirmed that the proposed amendments have been included before we were permitted to leave.
Now, just by way of clarification,
outside,
yes, just by way of
the Ministry of
clarification.
Transport and the government of the Republic of Ghana had no appetite at all for including ministers of state and members of parliament. If we would have done that, we would have done that since 2017. It's not, 6 months, to elections that anybody wants to give some privileges to members of parliament and to ministers of state. We would have done it long before now. You understand? So
Okay.
these provisions were not originally from members from the government of the Republic of Ghana. It came from parliament, and nobody among the Subsidiary Legislation Committee can say that it didn't come from there. And we are happy.
So just by way of clarification, Honorable Tampuli, you say the members of the Subsidiary Legislation Committee proposed this.
You understand? So this is the original position of this government, and we are happy to be withdrawing this particular ally following the public uproar.
Okay, so let me just get a clarification. The members of the Subsidiary Legislation Committee were the ones who proposed the addition of the Vice President, Speaker, Ministers, MPs, Chief Justice, and Justices of the Supreme Court, right?
Yes, please.
Which members proposed this?
On this one, I'm not sure I have the capacity to mention it, but that committee is chaired by the minority and chaired by Honorable Dr. Dominic Ayini. I'm sure if you speak to him, he would confirm what I'm telling you. But it came from the members of the Subsidiary Legislative Committee. Like I said, what we sent to Parliament is what I read to you.
Great. Now, because there's been a lot of, ordinarily I wouldn't be explaining my question, but because there's been a lot of discussions back and forth with suggestions that this was a minority amendment, I just want a clarification, because the LI came from your ministry. Was it the members of the committee, as in both minority and majority, or it was minority members of the committee who suggested this amendment?
Like I said, I'll leave that for the committee to respond to. What I do know is that there was unanimity. And if there's unanimity, you know what that means.
In the committee, okay. There was unanimity in the committee. Okay, that answers the question.